All right, class, so this is the third class that we should be meeting. So this is US and Texas Government, Class 3. And we were canceled on Thursday. I gave you guys a video. Hopefully some of you saw said video. I do track how many people watch it. Okay, so that's both good and bad. I see how much you watch it, click on it at all, and then I can actually see how long you actually watched it for. And so that's both comforting and concerning. I see that some of you watch the whole thing, and that's good. And then I also notice that some of you don't, you click on it and then you click off it. And then I'm not there to hold your hands to watch it. That's, that's up to you. This is this class right now, the format of it will lend itself to laziness. It will lend itself to failure. And your success is in your hands. We've given you enough rope to hang yourself. Do not do so. Right now, attendance has already dropped for the in-class, version. You are more than welcome. I don't care if you are on Tuesdays or Thursdays. If you want to come on any day, you come, because enough people have said, I don't want to come, that there are plenty of seats with plenty of room and plenty of social distancing. And those who are here don't seem to care about social distancing anyway, joking. So I want you here, because if you are here, it is without a doubt better for your learning experience. You will absolutely learn more. You are here at the university to learn. You are not here to just get a grade. If you're here to get a grade, well, that's easy, but it won't be as good. But I don't want you to walk away from your university experience without getting a university education. So do your best to get what you are paying for. Don't walk out of here not knowing what the subject we are teaching, the subject that we are teaching. So if you can be here, do be here. If you cannot be here, do the best you can to plow through the lectures on the videos. Okay, now with that being said, the lectures on the videos. Embedded in each of these will inevitably be me telling you that you got to do some kind of assignment, all right? And so those assignments I will tend to put up folders for. And those folders, you will just turn in the assigned writing, so to speak, and there will be a grade that is assigned to it. That grade will be divided by the number of assignments in there, and that will tend to be a attendance participation / grade, okay? Because how am I going to get you to participate in the class? Well, what will end up happening is I will either put the prompt in the lecture, and in addition to that, I will probably write the prompt again in a discussion board. I'm thinking about putting up a discussion board. Has any of you taken an online class before? You have. Now, I'm not a big fan of online courses. I do not. What is your thought of online classes, and being very candid? What?
This is my first time taking an online class. It's easy, but
it's easy.
It's hard to keep up with, because you have
it's hard to keep up with.
Prepare yourself and organize yourself.
Do you learn more?
No.
No, you do not. And we all know this. The only people who don't know this are the people who design these things for a living. And these companies say, or people whose job it is, I'm the online provost or whatnot, and they seem to promote it because this is the wave of the future and it makes a lot of money. It may make a lot of money, and it may be their job, but I'll be honest, from my experience of teaching it and from talking to all the students who've taken it, the learning experience is all in your hands, and that's the problem. It just is so much that's taken away. So again, I'm going to suggest being here. But if you were in one of those online classes, you'll notice there are discussion boards, and those are supposed to take the place of discussions, real discussions, right, that take place in the class. And without that, you got to come up with something else. May not be work as well, but it is something. And so that's kind of how I'm thinking about doing it. So expect that pretty soon, especially if there's if we are running low on participants. Now, I'm gonna assess the situation in the next week or two, and we're gonna have to make a decision if I'm gonna be lecturing to one person or three in this case, or if we're just gonna go all online. But if more people start showing, I can keep it this way. The lectures will certainly be a lot different. They'll be me at my house, sipping a nice tasty beverage poolside, and they'll be shorter, but they'll be much more reading material, and probably a lot more writing material, because I've got to do something for you, okay? So without that in-class participation, we got to replace it with something. So for those of you watching the video, well, you know, keep that in mind. And by the way, just get here if you can, because you're missing out on the great university experience. Who wants to experience, you know, college from a computer screen when you could be here having fun making new friends, okay? You don't make friends at home. Okay, so what did we discuss last week that I wanted you to come here prepared to deal with today, if you guys recall, any ladies recall? The Mayflower Compact. Okay, now today what I did, I put up 2 videos for you in a folder in the course content discussing the Mayflower Compact, sorry, Mayflower Compact. For those of you who have your computers open, for all I know you're watching your favorite videos doing something else, so I know, no, it's okay, I don't trust you, but I trust you. At this point, I don't care. This semester is going to be a weird one, so I'm just going to say technology, take it. If you have Blackboard open, do you see it?
Is it YouTube video links?
Yeah, they're video links, and they're all YouTube video links, and you'll have a couple on the Mayflower Compact. They're
Yes.
extremely short.
I see them.
Okay. And what was discussed last time we met about the Mayflower Compact? Well, the compact itself, we read a little bit about it. We read it, actually.
Yeah.
And we discussed its major purpose was survival. Okay.
Yes.
You know, these guys were supposed to land in one place. They didn't land in that place. There were agreements that they had from where they had come, but given that they had not landed where they should have, these agreements are now null and void, and they needed to deal with each other as a group, and they had to survive. And in doing so, they compacted, okay? They had a written agreement for their mutual survival. And it's pretty interesting when you think about it. We're talking about a ship of people. They write something, they sign it, and they do what? Adhere to it.
Mm-hmm.
How many of you would sit down and write something with somebody else today as individual citizens and go, okay, we're going to agree with it because we wrote it down? Now, of course, what lies to enforce this agreement? What is there to enforce this agreement? There's not see, nowadays we come up with a contract, and if you break the contract, you go to the what? The what? Court, which is part of the government. But these guys, there's no court here in America.
Show each other.
They kill each other?
No, they have each other.
They have each other, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, and they can appeal to that document. But the document requires enforcement. But who's behind the document that's going to enforce this?
Well, they're supposed to enforce it, but
What if they don't? Who did they swear to?
I mean, I guess God.
Crown.
Oh,
Yeah, or to Almighty.
God.
Yeah, so God is the enforcer, and they recognize these guys are very religious people, and they put their name down, swear to Almighty God, and they trust that Almighty, their word now is accountable to the Creator,
Right.
to God. And so this is what happened. Now this is going to be a big deal in our early government as to whether or not atheists should be able to serve in government. Why is that a big deal? So the foundation of our government, current government, is with this understanding that we've been created equal, right, and endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, such as the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's all fine and well. If you don't believe in God, you certainly don't believe we've been endowed by our Creator, because there's no Creator to endow us, right? And if we've not been created, we've not been endowed with these unalienable rights, such as the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, right? Okay. But what about oath swearing? I mean, if you don't believe in God, I mean, really, what is your oath worth?
Right. Nothing.
Nothing. There used to be a comic strip called The Wizard of Id, okay? And it was, you know, I guess it's kind of like a medieval times, you know, comic strip. And they had them swearing, you know, on the dictionary, right? I swear to parse all my verbs correctly, to correctly, you know, define my terms, yada, yada, yada. So help me Noah Webster. And then the guy doing it looks to the it's called breaking the fourth wall. He looks to the audience, you, and he says, wow, this separation of church and state has really gotten pretty far, you know, gone too far or something like that. The idea is that we take God out of the situation. You know, you swear on a dictionary or whatever. What is swearing on a Bible if you don't believe it, right? So you get like a guy like Bernie Sanders. He's not a believer. What if he turns out? Well, he won't, because he lost. You know, he does get sworn in as a senator, but interestingly enough, he doesn't believe that to whom he's swearing.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, what affinity does he have towards the founding principles? Well, none. Well, he's a commie. He's a communist. Okay, you know, atheist communist. He has no need to uphold our founding principles. He doesn't believe in them. He'll use our government, you know. Interesting. So early on, there were people who did not believe. John Locke, for example, did not believe that atheists had any, or should not take, you know, any part in elected governments that required these things, because you could not swear an oath. So he's founded, just the founding, and I'm not talking about the founding principles of natural law, which we're going to get to. Before you get to natural law, you have to believe in God, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so with the Mayflower Compact, that's what they had, and they had a sense of that, okay? We're going to talk about types of government today. I'm going to give you 6 types. And these will be exist prior to, these types will exist prior to American government, obviously. We chose one form. There are other videos I put on that I want you to watch. We read the Mayflower Compact. Before the Mayflower Compact, there's this thing called the Magna Carta, otherwise known as the Great Charter. I put 2 things, I think I put some videos up for that one. Did you see that one? The Magna Carta video. If I didn't put it up so I've got 2 folders I put up. I put up original documents folders, which will have certain original documents such as the Mayflower Compact, the Magna Carta, the Bill of Rights, English Bill of Rights. It will have the United States Declaration of Independence, United States Constitution. I think we've got the Articles of Confederation in there. Okay, so we're going to have all those original documents in there. Okay, so before, as we get going this week, I'm going to want you to watch the videos on the Magna Carta. I want you to go through the Magna Carta, understand, what it's saying, okay, what it's about. It's a revolutionary document in that it asserted rights of certain citizens in England, all right, and demanded a Bill of Rights over and from a tyrannical king,
Mm-hmm.
so that he just couldn't use the government to tyrannize them, to abuse his people. We get this idea of habeas corpus from there. We get the idea of rights of the accused from there. So, and these were barons who wrote this. It had to do with landowners and all. and that the king had certain duties to them, that he just didn't rule over them. It's very important because these are some of the foundational ideas from which, you know, the Americans will draw, okay? And so English common law is something we used in America, even, you know, as we were creating our own government. So these are important things to know. These documents, to know what our documents are is one thing, to know from where they come is another. Okay. That's why we're going to start off today with talking about 6 different types of government, because even before the Magna Carta and the English Bill of Rights, and before the Mayflower Compact, and before the Articles of Confederation, or Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, and finally the U.S. Constitution. Before then, you know, long before then, we had the Greeks. And the Greeks talked about government. And they asked themselves, what is the best form of government? We talked about what government was for the other day, right? What did we discuss it was for?
Consent to rule over.
No, we didn't say that. We didn't talk about the consent of the governed. I know that is a major part of our government, right? And that's in the Declaration of Independence, right? Now, if I mention it, my memory, it just doesn't seem like something I would have said on day one. It could have been. Maybe I read part of the Declaration of Independence. I didn't read anything. I know I quoted the Declaration of Independence, but I didn't read any of it. Because I don't recall quoting, because it's just not like me to quote that part. It's not my favorite part. So that's not important. It's just, my favorite part is we hold these truths to be self-evident. That I'm always like, yeah, that's the one we need to know. We really focus in on. Well, we talked about what is government. You know, Thomas Jefferson discussed what government is for, and that is to secure the rights of man. What rights? Well, the rights that we just discussed. What are they? Say it again. Not the Bill of Rights yet. We're talking about the Declaration of Independence, which Thomas Jefferson said that governments are formed to secure these rights. What are these rights? The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Right? And, you know, we get the Bill of Rights are kind of like what I call tertiary rights, right? So like the Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. Okay? You have a right to life, therefore you have a right to defend your life, do you not?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you have a right to defend your life, do you not also have the right to the means to defend your life? Now you got a 92-pound girl and a 300-pound man, right? She has a right to life, and he's going to come get her. He doesn't have much of a chance against that guy, does she? No, she doesn't. But there's a great equalizer. It's called a bullet. Okay. And that has saved many a victim, okay, from tyranny from the government, tyranny from citizens. Okay, so you have if you have a right to liberty, do you not also have a right to religion, to practice your own religion? Yes, you do. Okay, because that's part of liberty, right? If you have a right to the pursuit of happiness. You don't have a right to happiness, folks. You have a right to the pursuit of happiness.
Mm-hmm.
What is happiness? Well, that's a philosophical concept we talked about the other day. It has to do with virtue. Do you have a right to do virtuous things? Absolutely. Does the government have a right to make you do vicious things, which is the opposite of virtuous, is vicious? No. Right. So what if your religion says it is wrong to kill babies, and the government says you will kill babies? And then you're like, I'm not going to do that. I have a religious right. I have a right to practice, religion based on my natural right to the freedom to pursue happiness. That is the virtuous life. And it would be tyrannical of them to make you do so. Correct? It'd be a violation. So governments are formed in order to protect your rights, to keep you from your rights from being violated. That's what Thomas Jefferson says. That's back in 1776. But let's go all the way prior to Jesus, which is over 2,000 years ago. Okay? they're at that point talking about what the good life is, happiness is, virtue, and all that. Aristotle and them. Who taught Aristotle? Well, Plato taught Aristotle, and who taught Plato? Socrates. And they write books like Plato's Republic, The Laws, right? And you will take your philosophy class. Who's taken philosophy here yet? Okay, and you've read those books?
I read Plato's Dialogue, and all I'm gonna say is I'll read that book when I'm on my deathbed, because it opened my mind.
Awesome. It's a great way to question things. Teach you. The great thing about Socrates is we learned how to ask the right questions. Philosophy is about asking the correct questions, so with the goal of truth in mind. Correct. I'm also a philosophy professor. That's primarily been my job for the last 15 years. This government stuff is not new, but it's newer than teaching philosophy. And what about you?
Reading Plato's Apology.
Plato's Apology, okay? And he's not saying sorry. The word apology means reason, right? Apologios, right? From the Greek, and that's where we get apologists in religion, where you're given reasons for the hope that lies within, as Peter would say. Okay, so back then they were asking, what is the best form of government? Well, what's our menu? You know, what types of governments exist? So we talk about rule, right? How many people rule? That's a real question. Is there anarchy, which is no rule, right? Nobody rules, no law. I guess we could say that. But if we assume that there are, but that's no government. Would you agree with that? If it's anarchy, that means there is no government protecting rights. That's every man for himself, or person for themselves. What happens if we have no police? Imagine we had a lot of laws, but we had no police.
No one would enforce.
Yeah, I mean, laws are only as valuable as they are enforceable. So, for example, there are federal laws against marijuana and the selling of it. Okay? Go to California, and there is absolutely no enforcement of it because they have, as a state, said, we as state enforcement, we're going to legalize it, meaning the state's not going to enforce federal laws concerning the consumption of, recreational consumption, that is even, of marijuana. They could regulate it and tax it, and they raise revenue that way, right? But if you go buy some pot, you have to use cash, apparently. You can't, and they actually, there's a whole weird thing where I think a buddy of mine was a security team of, moving cash from places to places like Loomis and that. So they can't just what? Because these pot stores have so much cash on hand because everybody has to pay cash, right? So you actually have to bring in these armored cars to take the cash to the bank. You go to Walmart, what do you use? You use your card. So there's a lot less cash. So they still use cash there, but this is kind of interesting. So, point being, laws about pot are in California worthless because they're not enforced, and the federal government's not going to go in and start busting all these pot shops. It's just not going to do it. So, what happens when you get rid of all the police? Well, then you're not going to have enforcement of any law. Any law. Now, what does that do for the rights of man? What does that do for your right to life? You may have a right to life, but there is no government that is there to secure that right. And thus you must do it yourself. So that's not necessarily a form of government. That's actually kind of a lack of government. You can make it's all lip service. Oh, we're going to make a law against the, against the law to walk across the street. We're not going to enforce it. So everybody's jaywalking. Who cares? In fact, that's why people jaywalk, because nobody really cares. You can enforce it, but come on. Who does? So I think that's not one we're going to talk about. But what about government systems that actually do enforce regulations? So we'll give you 6. And Aristotle broke them into basically good and bad, tyrannical and virtuous, okay? Just and unjust is really the words we'll probably use more likely, more often. The just rule of this versus the unjust rule of that. And by unjust, who knows what justice is? Anybody define the word justice? There's a lot of talk about justice right now. A lot of people asking for justice. Well, okay, tell me what you mean, and then we will, just like Socrates would do, right? He would ask, well, what do you mean by piety, right? With Euthyphro, you know. In this case, he wanted to know what justice was. What is justice? It's a philosophical concept. You need to define your terms. Justice, there are two types of justice. I can give you distributive and retributive. Distributive and retributive. Distributive justice means is like this: equal pay for equal work, right? The cost should equal the value, okay? The price is the value. You're not getting ripped off, okay? If you do equal work to me, then with equal qualifications, equal time and job, all things being the same, you should get the same wages. All right? I should neither be overpaid nor underpaid, given my qualifications and ability and my position and the expectations. Equal pay for equal work. That's a good example of distributive justice, okay? So, you know, you compare apples to apples. My wife makes more money than I do. Does that mean life is unjust because a woman makes more money than I do? Does that mean, shouldn't women and men make the same amount?
Yes.
No. She makes more than I do. Why should she make
Well,
less?
it's 'cause her qualifications, like her.
I have higher qualifications. I have more degrees than she does. I have 4, she has 2. But the difference is we're in 2 different fields, okay? And so she's in a field that does something different than I do. Among my peers, okay, the question is, do I make as much money as they do, doing the same amount of work, given the same qualifications, with the same amount of responsibilities and the same, and by the way, do I bring in more people? Do I kick, or do I repel more people, right? What is my value compared to others in my field, apples to apples? And then at the end of the day, once I find out that once we've taken all those things into consideration, then we can put gender into the equation and ask, are we all making the same amount of money given what we do, how long we've done it, with the same qualifications? And if there's a difference, and there are no other differences, and the only difference is gender, and we find out that men are making less than women, is that the cause? Is gender the cause? Right? And now I said men because I didn't give you what field. There are many fields where that women dominate, right? There are many fields where women actually make more money. But it may not be because they're women though, right? Maybe because they've been there long, maybe because they have higher qualifications, maybe this, that, and the other, but it may also be that they're women. You know, I don't know. You know, maybe women are more desired as gynecologists than men are. Okay? Understandable. Therefore, they will demand more money, right? A man will literally have to lower his price, perhaps, to draw that. So, is that unfair? You say no. Okay, fine. That's fine. You compare the apples to apples, and that's how you do it, right? Distributive justice. Equal pay for equal work. That is qualitative work and quantitative work. Not just the amount of work you do, but the quality of the work that you do. Okay? And that goes with qualifications, correct? Apples to apples. You want to eat as just as you can. And when you find out that there's injustice, that women have made less money in this field merely because they're women, now we're going to say, okay, that's unjust. We need to fix that. Right? Equal pay for equal work. That's how you do it. All right, cool. But what about retributive justice? What is that? That comes from retribution, punishment. Does the punishment fit the crime? This brings up the Lexis Talionis, the law of the tooth. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Have you heard that? All right. What it's saying is equals being treated equal. You take a life, what should the punishment be?
Giving it up.
What?
You take a life, you give your life.
You give your life. So I squash a bug and they're gonna kill me. Took a life. No. What we mean is a qualitative life too, right? If I go kill somebody's cow, okay, I might have killed their livelihood. And back in the old days, they might have taken my life because you've not just killed the cat. It's not because you took the cow's life. It's because you took the person's livelihood from it. And the horse thieves used to be, they'd hang them, right? But ideally, the idea is, so you get this guy, he goes out and kills somebody. Oh, this guy Peterson right now. Okay, Peters. I forget his name. That's a good thing. Later, he killed his wife, Lacey, who was pregnant with their unborn child, Connor. And he killed her and put her out to sea with some cement, and sure enough, the body decomposed, came out of the cement, comes to shore, they find her, along with Connor, the baby, and he gets prosecuted, found guilty of murder, 2 murders, that's what they have, Connor's law, right? So that if you kill a viable unborn baby, that's murder. Okay, so if a guy, and a lot of people were against that, because if you say, why would that be, right? Well, because people are pro-abortion. If they're pro-abortion, and you start, saying you're on the dole for double homicide, well, what does that say about women who have abortions, right? It says they're killing their real babies, then this is really murder.
Yeah.
Okay, legalize murder in that case, but they didn't like it. Well, anyway, so Lacey Peterson, her husband, Scott, I think his name is, he killed 2 people. Well, he gets put on death row. Okay, so it would appear that he murdered, now he's going to be killed for the lives he took. Recently what has happened is they argued, his lawyer went back to court, argued that he should not be put to death because the jury was biased, okay, because of all the television coverage. All of you actually might have been very young when this was going on. This is a long time ago for you guys. To me, just like yesterday, I watched every day. But turns out the judge said, no, you're right, and took him off death row, and now I guess he's only got a life sentence for 2 murders.
Still his life.
He's still guilty. The judge did not say he's not guilty. So the question is, if he is still guilty of 2 murders, is it just that he gets to live? After all, according to the Lexis Talionis, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a life for a life, right? If a man's life be taken, so too must the man who took it, right? Okay. According to that, now I'm not asking if in your mind you're for or against the death penalty. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking equals being treated equal. Human life for human life, or human life for sitting behind bars. Are they the same thing? They are not. You can still find joy in prison. A lot of people get very accustomed. It's true, right?
Mm-hmm.
They could read, they could watch TV, they could lift all the weights they want.
He's gonna be guilty the rest of his life, though. That takes a toll.
Not if he's a sociopath.
Yeah.
Facts.
Sociopaths have no empathy. He doesn't care. I mean, he cares that he's in there. He wants out. He didn't care. He was willing to kill his wife and child. For what? because he wanted to run off with this woman named, I think her name was Amber Fry. Lied to her, said she was already dead, and then went to made sure, and he did it on Christmas Eve, of all days to do it. Was justice served?
No, not according to.
Right, so here's the question now, there we go. Okay, we got two types of justice that we're talking about here, retributive and distributive. If we're going to judge governments, whether they be just or unjust governments, right?
Mhm.
We're asking the question of, do they distribute justice evenly? Retributively or distributively? Okay? Do they protect rights equally? Or do they appropriately punish? Okay? So one of the things going on right now in our government has been prison reform. So Donald Trump has recently pardoned a woman, I forget her name. She was in jail for like 25 years. Kanye West and, of all people, Kanye West and Kim Kardashian got him to do this. Interesting, you know, people I wouldn't have considered to be all that, you know, I just never considered them really. And they come to him and they say, we need this thing called prison reform. And they brought attention to this woman and a couple thousand at least people in prison right now who've got these excessive jail terms. Like this woman been in jail for like 20 something years for what? Selling marijuana. And allegedly it was a first offense. I think her name is Alice Johnson, isn't it? Have you heard of this? You haven't heard about this? Well, he brings her out of jail. He starts this thing called, I forget, is it the Fresh Start Initiative or something like that? Where these people now can get out of jail and start anew after being sentenced, these ridiculous sentences for what many would call a petty crime. And yeah, 25 years is a lot of time for selling pot.
Half your life, yeah.
So most of her life was spent in jail. And so, look up Alice Johnson in computers. There are a couple others that he has brought out, and he's pardoned them. Not just gotten them out of jail, but he commuted their sentence, and then he pardoned them for the crime that they committed because it was so excessive, okay? Was the government just? Did they distribute or appropriately retribute justice, retribution in those cases? Or was the punishment greater than the crime? Here's the bottom line. This is how you say justice. Think of the equals being treated equally and unequals being treated unequally. Okay? Should unequals be treated equally? No, they should be treated unequally because they are unequal.
Right.
Okay, look, I used to tell my students, I'm going to tell you guys, I've been discriminated against by the NBA. Did you know that? They will not let me play in the NBA. You know why?
Really?
Why?
I know! How insulting. They don't treat me like LeBron James. They will not even let me in the court. Not even on the court, in the locker room. You know why? Because they stink. And that's just. You know why it's just? Because we're being treated unequally. You know why we're being treated unequally?
Because you're unequal.
We are not equal. We are equally humans. We have the right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. That doesn't guarantee that I get to play basketball in the NBA because I am not as good as he is. All right? And many who actually do play in the NBA don't get paid as much as he does. You know why? Because they're not equal. They get unequal pay because of their inequities. Okay? They're unequal. All right. So that we're talking about justice. How should the government treat us? So when we talk about a just government, we're talking about equals being treated equally and unequals being treated unequally. Okay? So going back to the 6 forms of government, we got 3 that are just and 3 that are unjust. Right? That practice justice and those who do not practice justice. And they're just opposites. Okay? Let's start with monarchy. Monarchy. Monarchy is the just rule of the one. I know you might go, really, a king? Because when you think of monarchy, you think of kings, and you would be pretty much correct. But mono just means one. It's all the power resides in the one individual. The power of the three branches of government, right? To legislate, to adjudicate, and to execute the law, right? So that you make the law, you enforce the law and judge the law, and it is all in the hands of one person, the sovereign Lord, the King. On the other side of that, and I'd write it on the other side, not under it. I would write the word tyrant. The monarch is the just ruler, singular ruler, and the tyrant is the unjust ruler. The tyranny of the one. Now we can name some tyrants, can we not?
King James.
King James? Sure. At least according to our history, right? But let's talk about some contemporary tyrants. World affairs. Are there any governments that are ruled that the rulership is under the head of one person? Currently, right now? What, can you give me one?
I think it's South Korea.
Did you say South Korea?
Yeah.
North Korea. North Korea. Kim Jong-il. And it has been rumored that this tyrant is in a coma. However, his health has been rumored to be bad for many, he disappeared for a couple weeks at one point a few months ago or about a year ago, and they're like, where is he? All of a sudden he just pops out of nowhere, hey, here I am. So I don't know if he's in a coma. But once he's dead, once his father died, he took over, right? Well, so once he's dead, his sister will probably take over. And there's no telling whether or not she's any more honorable or just than he is, okay? And so that's North Korea. Okay, that's a totalitarian regime under Marxist rule, right? They control information, they control all the assets, there's no free enterprise there's nobody owns a business, okay? Okay, everything's government owned, and he's the top. Is there any other one closer to America? Anybody know about Florida? There's a large Cuban population there. Why are the Cubans there? Because they escaped from Fidel Castro, right? And the Castros are in charge, so Fidel died, and I think it was his son or his brother took over. I should know this as a professor. It's just slipped my mind. But you got all the power in one person, and these are tyrants. These are people whose rights they violate other people's natural rights. Okay, but according to their government, all the power's in them. So of course, to them, it is right. But are they just? Do they treat their citizens justly? The answer is no. They violate their rights all the time. They're political prisoners. If you disagree with them, you can go to jail. That's true in China. That's true in North Korea. True in Cuba for sure. That's why people are trying to escape from these countries. They do have an immigration problem. The problem is nobody wants to be there. Okay, and we have an immigration problem, and that shows that we're a good nation. You want to go where it's good, right?
Right.
We wouldn't have a problem if we weren't such great, you hear all these people talk about how bad America is, but if America was so bad, then why is everybody trying to get here? Right? Okay, so we got the just rule of the one, which is called a monarch, the unjust rule of the one, which is a tyrant. Let's go with the unjust rule of the few, and that is going to be called oligarchy. Aristocracy. I know a lot of people, aristocracy. you know, like Aristocats. Kratts. Aristocats is one of my son's favorite movies. Got a bunch of kitty cats. Lost their way, trying to get back, but in this case, it's aristocracy. A lot of us think, oh, it's just a bunch of rich folk. That's not what it really is. Aristocracy is the just rule of the few. That is, the power is put in the hands of a few people, and they use it wisely and justly. Now, some of our founders really desired America to be an aristocracy. Why would you want there to be power in the hands of the few rather than power in the hands of the many, or just the one? Power in the hands of one is scary.
Yeah.
Power in the hands of many is scary.
And chaotic.
Power in the hands of few, just putting that power in other people's hands is kind of scary. Well, I'll tell you, I'll answer that question in a minute once we get to all three of these. The opposite of aristocracy is oligarchy, the unjust rule of the few. Russia right now, besides Vladimir Putin is an oligarchy. And there are these really rich, powerful guys in charge of what goes on in Russia, and they are not just. They are quite unjust. There's been a lot of discussion about that. So we have monarchy, just rule of one; tyranny, the unjust rule of one; aristocracy, the just rule of the few; and then oligarchy, the unjust rule of the few. So now we're going to go to the just rule of the many. Can anybody guess what the name of that is? If you guessed, you'd probably be wrong. It's called polity. P-O-L-I-T-Y, polity. That's the just rule of the many. Now, by the way, this is all according to Aristotle. All right? Well, then, what is the tyranny of the masses, they call it, or the tyranny of the many? Tyranny of the masses is called democracy. Yeah. So we're not a straight democracy, so we can say that and be okay, all right? America's not a straight democracy. We say democracy, but we're not a straight democracy, okay?
Yeah.
So don't worry about it. So going back to why would we want an aristocracy versus a democracy or a monarchy or whatever? Well, how many of you here think everybody should be allowed to vote? Nobody thinks everybody should vote?
You said how many of us think everyone should be allowed to vote?
Like everyone as in.
All of us in our nation should vote.
I think we should be allowed to vote.
Are all of us?
Yeah. I mean, all of us that are of age.
Why do you put age on it? Why do
Just
you
so
say-
that like you can mentally process and like figure out what you
Understand.
believe.
Yeah.
So mentally processing it is the issue.
Well, like I feel like a 10-year-old's not gonna understand, you know?
Well, what if you're 20 and don't understand? Should you still be able to vote if you don't understand? So what you're saying is if you don't understand, you shouldn't be able to vote?
Well, I mean, but there's
Should
still
there be
gonna
voting tests?
I mean, it's possible, but I'm saying like because
It's
even
possible.
maybe like I mean, there's a driving test.
That'd be a
like, once
great
you're
way to keep
16.
people from voting, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Actually, that
definitely.
probably would.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, say that again?
Probably would be a good suggestion.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you something. Voting tests were used to keep people from voting.
Oh
Kept-
yeah, back in the day with
They kept the black people from
yeah, they
voting.
kept the
Why? How did they use it? Because at that time, the black population, by and large, was illiterate, couldn't read.
yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean, by the way, if you can't read, you don't understand that you want somebody to represent you, and that if some guy gets up there and says, "You vote for me, look, I'll be able to, we'll work on school so you can read," and then they go, "Sorry, you can't vote for this guy because you can't read," certainly you know how to listen, right? But yeah, so that's why they got rid of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yet we still understand this idea that should you be voting if you don't understand what you're voting for? So we leave it up to the individuals, right?
Yes.
Which is good and bad, because when you leave it up to individuals, well, individuals aren't exactly the most moral of people all the time. And they'll still vote. We often vote on emotion rather than on intellect.
Right.
You are in this class, and we've got a few months before, 2 months before the election. My hope is that if you do participate, that you are well aware of not only the issues, not just the candidates, but the issues that they represent. And then you ask yourself, do those issues represent what I really believe to be true? Right?
Right.
And so part of this class is going to be insisting that you use analytical tools to question, like Socrates would, whether or not you should vote a certain way, whether you should vote at all. Like, for example, if both the candidates were voting for socialism and abortion on demand and against religious freedom, I wouldn't feel so obligated to vote. I mean, I don't care. You guys are you're wrecking the joint anyway. It's like, vote for who's going to destroy the place faster. I get it. Okay? Yeah, you got to have confidence to vote. So, but my hope is that with this class, because it is on U.S. government, that you will not only know what you're voting for because of the government, but why you're voting. That's the key. But that's on you, right? It's not on the government to tell you you can't vote, if that makes sense. Okay? All right, so we have 6 types of government, and 3 are just and 3 are unjust. And so, which is the way that maximizes justice? That's the goal, after all, right? Can you have a perfect government? No, you cannot have a perfect government. Not a perfect man-run government. Why can you not have a perfect man-run government? By man, I mean mankind.
We're not perfect.
Because humans are not perfect. And if you use an imperfect tool, you're going to get an imperfect result.
Right.
And given the sheer number of people in our country and the different levels of virtue of the people voting and the number of people running, we're going to get more and less virtuous people running, sometimes less, and depending on our society, the less just people voting will vote in an unjust government. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So if a government is generally unjust, who do we have to, in our context, because we vote those into government, right? If we have an unjust, unvirtuous government, who do we have to blame?
The unjust voters.
The voters, yeah. Those who voted. Now, you can be the perfect person, doesn't mean, but again, we're talking majority rule here to vote for your representative. You vote for a tyrant, well, they either lied to you really well, or you kind of like the way they do things.
Yeah.
So who do you have to blame? Who do you have to, yeah. They have 2 thumbs and they're pointed right, So there you go. So what have we talked about today? Talked about videos, content, talked about what we're going to be doing as far as kind of participation in attendance type stuff, correct?
Yes.
We talked about justice, what it is, 2 types of justice. Talked about the function of government, right, to secure the rights of man. And certain governments, there's 6 types of governments I gave. 3 of them are just, 3 of them are unjust, right?
Yep.
We just briefly asked, which one do we want? Which one do we have? Which is the one we have is most closely related to, we'll call it aristocracy, hopefully, right? If we have a just government, who thinks we have a just government here? Now, that's a trick question.
Oh.
On a scale of 1 to 10, do we have a just government? You say, well, give me a number, okay? Because if you say, no, we don't have just government, then we have the right to alter or to abolish said government. Now, right now, there's a group of people trying to abolish our government because they say it is unjust. Okay? Who are these people? Nobody knows? What?
Protesters.
Well, yeah, I protest every time my kid tells me he wants something. I say, I'm not going to get it to him. Of course, I always lose that protest. You're talking about a lot of the, like, Antifa and maybe Black Lives Matter. Those are two groups. Specifically, these are Marxist groups. I don't know if you know that. So a lot of people who disagree with Black Lives Matter don't disagree with the statement Black Lives Matter. They disagree with Marxism. What is Marxism? Marxism's the political philosophy from which we get communism, where the government runs everything, that there's no private ownership of things, that these individual rights and freedoms we claim to have, the government controls. Okay? Communist regimes such as the Soviet Union, those were oligarchies, the unjust rule of the few. China is a communist regime. Okay? And so you don't have a right to speak out against the government. You don't have freedom of speech, you don't have freedom of religion, you don't have freedom of press. Okay? The government controls all the natural resources, otherwise known as the commanding heights of the economy. Okay? So these Marxists, they want to replace, what they want to do is they want to get rid of all the wealthy people, or at least get rid of all the people's wealth, right? And redistribute it so that everybody has what's called equal outcomes. Should we all have equal outcomes, economically speaking? What do you think?
Economically speaking.
Yeah, should we all make the same amount of money no matter what, you know what? Should there be allowed, should wealthy people be allowed? Should there be billionaires? You say yes.
If there should be billionaires?
Yeah, or should we get rid of the ability to have so much? Should we say you're not allowed to have that much money?
No, definitely not.
I mean, look, go tell LeBron James, I'm going to take all your money from you. You're going to make just as much as a janitor makes.
There's definitely an undistribution of income between wealth and the poor in the world. So you're gonna want to say, like, I don't want there to be, but they worked hard for it. So
Yeah.
they worked hard for their money. So obviously, like, if I worked hard for my money, I would want to keep it.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, like,
I mean, there is some displacement for sure.
yeah.
Here's a quick question. A lot of people who are Marxists believe that these things, that wealth is finite, that you don't create wealth, that there's only a piece of pie, there's a pie, and these people have taken more than their share. You always hear that, their share. Capitalism is on the belief that there is more than just this piece of pie, that we bake our own pie, and we get to eat the pie we bake.
Mhm.
Marxism says, no, there's one pie, and you've come in and you're greedy and you're taking it all. All right? Let me tell you something. Before Amazon existed, right? Amazon created tens of thousands of jobs. I don't like Jeff Bezos. I don't know him personally, I'm just saying. It has nothing to do with his money. I don't like his politics, okay? But, should I say Jeff Bezos should be the second richest man in the world, having billions of dollars? Billions of dollars, and I'm not talking, you know how much a billion is? $1,000 million, okay? Do you have $1 million?
I would.
Because if you did, he doesn't just have 1,000 of those. He has like $200 billion, I hear. That's how much he's worth. Okay? That's a lot of billions. And that's a lot of billions, not a lot of millions. That's an extreme amount of millions, okay? This guy's never gonna be like going, I'm broke. How am I gonna make it? The guy's not. It's not what it would take for that guy to go. But before Amazon came, that was not possible. He created that.
Mm-hmm.
And how many people are feeding their family off of what he created?
A lot.
Oh yeah. He's created millionaires.
Yeah.
He's created millionaires. And he's created people who just deliver your packages until they get out of college or whatever. Okay?
Does
So-
that contradict the whole Marxism thing?
Marxism that
Marxism.
suggests, yeah, I mean, he's created a whole industry
Yeah.
which has created more wealth.
That way.
If you can create more wealth, it shows that wealth is not finite and you're just merely hoarding all of the pie. Okay? Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, anybody who's invented anything has created wealth. Okay? Wealth isn't just sitting there for you to take or be given. Okay, I'm going to disagree with Marxism completely. Now, is greed bad? Yeah. I would say, you know, if you take more than you deserve, that's greed. Okay, that's fine. But if you created it, don't you deserve it?
Yes.
Okay, so Marxists say there is no creation of wealth, therefore you don't deserve it.
How does Marxism come into the fact of Black Lives Matter?
It's, well, that's the ideology that's being pushed underneath. So if you go to the Black Lives Matter website, you'll find out that the underlying political philosophies that are that they use are Marxist. Okay, now the idea that Black Lives Matter, because black people are humans, right? And all humans matter, therefore black humans matter. Okay, and the question of Black Lives Matter about justice: are the police treating that race equally, justly? Those are great questions to ask. But the group behind Black Lives Matter, the motives, I think the black cause has been hijacked and is being used to promote Marxism, not justice. Okay? And so I disagree with Marxism, not with we hold these truths to be self-evident that all, you know, men are created equal, right? We don't treat people equally because we're all created equally. That's not what Marxism says. Of course, Marxism denies a creator, so how could we be equal, if that makes sense to you? So any disagreement with Black Lives Matter has nothing to do with black or lives or even mattering. It has to do with Marxism and a political system that is deeply oppressive on many people. So you go to the website, you'll see, we'll talk about Marxism more in depth, and you can see it there. Okay, justice can more readily be obtained, in my opinion, by other groups, you know, through other means, and that's what we want. Justice. We don't want communism, because communism is not just. It is an unjust society, which is never equitable. You know, they don't make people equally rich; they make people equally poor. That's how they get rid of. They don't say, "Oh, we're going to redistribute the wealth so that we all get an even piece of the pie." They destroy the pie.
Yeah.
So nobody gets any. Because if I can't have as much as you can, I'll be damned if you're going to have any. Okay, that makes sense. Any questions? This is the fun stuff. This is where we are. Oh yeah, because when we talk about government, right now we're in a very heated debate over who's going to be the president of the United States, and Biden's being accused of being a Trojan horse for Marxist beliefs, such as, you know, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's a hardcore Marxist. Bernie Sanders is he's a Marxist, and he's like, yeah, I'm a real one, and Kamala Harris is super, you know, she's a Marxist. So these are people who really hold these beliefs, and then you got Trump, who, quite frankly, has just got an unsavory personality to many people. Many people hate him.
It's because his personality.
But it doesn't make him a Marxist, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I got an unsavory personality to some. I mean, it doesn't mean my ideas are bad. So, you know, that's why we want to judge ideas, not people.
Yeah.
We want to divorce what we're voting for, from whom we are voting for.
Yeah, that's why it's important not to vote off of like your feelings.
Yeah, I mean, look. Yeah, I mean, you just get the cutest looking person up there and let's vote on them. Well, wait a minute, that'd be stupid, right? You wanna know what they're voting for. You know, we wanna know what their views are.
Right.
And that's why we vote. We don't vote. And so, but if you're a Marxist, then we know who you should vote for. The person who's most close. I'm not saying Biden's a Marxist, by the way. That is, he may not be, but he has Marxist people in his party, and will have Marxist people in his cabinet. Okay, John Brennan, who is the former CIA head of the CIA, was a Marxist communist, a real communist. So, you know, watch that. So keep that in mind. That's how important this is. And fun stuff. All right. With that, I'm going to get this online as soon as I can. I got another class to teach. Then I got to watch this thing tick across the screen, you know, on YouTube to actually get her done. So with that, also pay attention to the announcements. I'll do my best to announce any and all assignments I can. Okay?
Are we gonna have assignments this week?
Well, I'll put something on, like, you know, I'll put something down, okay? First of all, I definitely want you to know what I taught online, and so we're gonna try to get this all fixed, so we all know what to expect. Go with the announcements, all right? Yeah, that being said, all right.